please silence all electronic devices at this time. Mrs. McLeod is out of the country, and so she will not be present this evening. I will be passing each of you 4 different things to pass around. The first one is a clarification for our minutes. Is that it? Yeah. And it's just a minor clarification, but I'll start it this way. The second one is the recommendation for the ad hoc committee that we're planning on discussing later on. The third thing that I'm passing around is the schedule where everyone signed up for graduations. And the last thing to pass around is a summary, sort of a summary of everyone's vote on the community advisory committees. It's not really a summary, is it? Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. School board assigned committees. The things that you are already, these are our committees. I'm sorry. So these are the things that you are signed up for.
It's a worksheet.
And it's a worksheet so that you can let us know if you want to continue on those committees or if you'd like something else. And I would like these returned to me by Wednesday, June 6th. So actually the easiest way to let me know is just to email me what committees you are currently on, or if you would like to change it. You don't have to send this to me. You can just look at this and then just let me know by email what committees you'd like to be put on. And then Mr. McDonald and I will get together the first week of June, or sometime after June 6th, correct? Also, this evening we will have 2 closed sessions. Hopefully we'll have 2. We're hoping that we'll be finished in time from the workshop to be able to go into one of the closed sessions directly after the workshop. And if not, then we'll have to have both of them after the formal meeting. But we'll definitely try to get to one right after the workshop, and then do the other one after the formal meeting. And after the admin matters, I'd like to take this time to make a clarification about about the new ad hoc committee that I've talked with most of you about. I've spoken with all of you, but we'll be voting on the formation of this committee this evening. And so I have asked 4 school board members, Mr. Edwards, Mrs. Weems, Mrs. Rye, and Mrs. Felton, to serve on the committee, and I will serve as the ex officio. And the recommendation, which I think I sent out to you, all of you got a copy of the recommendation. Also, Dr. Spence and Dr. Bergen will be on the committee, and then some other community members. And if there's any questions about that, now would be a good time to ask about that or clarify anything for that committee. Okay. Does anyone else have something for admin matters? Ms. Manning.
I participated in the Special Olympics opening ceremony weekend before last. It was wonderful at Plaza Middle School, and I would just like to take this opportunity to recognize our attorney, Ms. Linetti, for all the work that she does for Special Olympics. She serves on the board, and she and her family were there volunteering as well. And Cammie's going to be taking a large contingent up to Richmond who qualified for the Special Olympics.
You're doing a lot of really exciting things with Special Olympics all over the place in your schools. It's really neat to watch your students, your staff come together.
It was wonderful, Cammie. Thank you. Thank you
Yep.
for what you're doing.
And thank you for attending that. Anyone else? Ms. Fry?
So I and Mrs. Felton will feel free to add, I'm sure, but We attended the ceremony. It was the opening of the new Thorogood Education Center, along with recognizing the renovated historic home, and bringing it up here because there was a 5th grade class of students from Shelton Park Elementary. And honest to God, it's Mrs. Porter is the teacher. I said this because right out of Hollywood Central Casting, but that really is her name. And they won some contest, and they were there. They were the first ones to walk through into the new education center. So I thought it was a lovely gesture on their part. And the only other thing I wanted to mention, end of year events involving the various club lacrosse teams in the district, and of course the Pilot had a recent article about it. And there was the first of its kind all-star game Friday night at Sunday night at Virginia Wesleyan, and a number of our students, 23 in fact, qualified for all-star status in the South Side, which also included some Norfolk and Chesapeake schools. So a lot of good energy there, and they're getting closer to reaching their critical mass. But a lot of parent and administrators deserve a lot of credit for the progress being made. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other admin matters to discuss? Thank you.
Just a reminder, you've got it on your sheet, but tomorrow night is the Adult Learning Center graduation. So we look forward to seeing those of you who've signed up at that really great event that we have every year.
And it's at Princess Anne High School.
Princess Anne High School.
Dr. Spence, we're ready for information about the One Lunch program.
Great. See, we've got a number of guests here who are anxious to talk to you about this, so I'm going to turn it right over to Mr. Keever and some of our guests who are here tonight to talk to you.
I'm sorry.
Well, you want blue? I
I was
can trade
totally,
you.
no, I was totally just kidding.
See, look, see?
Yeah, that's. We got
Everybody
one. Oh,
get
she
it.
got the green one, that's good.
Everybody get a folder.
Yeah.
It's interesting to watch you trade the colors. Good. You ready?
We're ready.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Chair Anderson, Vice Chair McDonald, and school board members. Today it's our pleasure to update the school board on an innovative lunch scheduling option our high schools have field tested during the course of the last 12 months. Joining me in presenting this afternoon are Dr. Cheryl Askew, Principal of Lansdowne High School, Dr. Daniel Smith, Principal of Pelham High School, and Mr. Matt Delaney, Principal of Salem High School. During their portion of the presentation, they will introduce special guests that are with them from their schools. Additionally, a number of high school principals and administrators are also in attendance to participate in this conversation. The presentation today will provide a foundation of understanding around the current high school lunch schedule we use, directly associate use of a modified lunch schedule with the work we are pursuing as a school division through the concept of transformational learning. We will also provide the board insight into the level of planning that has taken place to field test the One Lunch schedule, share some of the identified successes and challenges that we've encountered along the way, and then hear directly from 3 schools about their experiences. At the end of the presentation, we would be more than happy to address questions. I wanted to take a few minutes to give you just some reminders as a board about the current lunch schedule that we are using. That lunch schedule was developed in the fall of 2012 as a result in the shift in credit attainment needs and the thought process from the board that every student should be afforded an opportunity for lunch. As you'll recall, when block scheduling first came on board in the city of Virginia Beach, it was 1994, and there were 3 schools that initiated that process: Ocean Lakes, Princess Anne, and Kempsville. Not all schools were on the block scheduling model. Over the course of 5 to 8 years, schools began to adopt that model, and that model had a lunch study block component. And when I say lunch study block, I mean that the lunch period was 45 minutes long, and then the study block period was 45 minutes long. And as you may recall from that model, if you chose to have a lunch study block, you could not necessarily take 8 courses. In fact, most students at that point were taking 6 courses, 3 on the A day, 3 on the B day. But as the credit requirement went up, there was a thought that we needed to adjust our schedule accordingly. So in the fall of 2012, a schedule was brought forward to embed lunch during third block. And that embedded lunch happened 4 times by 30 minutes over the course of the entire third block. I was just finishing the end of the year at Salem as principal, taking over for Dr. Robertson, and started my tenure at Salem with a shift in this lunch schedule. And I will tell you, in the first 9 to 10 weeks of a 4 by 30-minute lunch period, it was fairly hectic at the school level. And I tell you that because it was a fairly seismic shift in how we had handled the lunch period. Students are in there for 30 minutes. There is about a 2-minute turnover. An additional group of 400 or 500 students come in. Happened 4 times. When we got in there for the first day of lunch, we were surprised to see that there weren't enough seats for all the students that we'd scheduled into that lunch block. And additionally, we were surprised to see that there were tons of empty tables in the 4th lunch, as the schedule needed to continue to be balanced. I share that context with you because that was a challenging time in our schools as we made a shift in lunch schedules. But eventually, that process worked itself through. In the spring of 2017, and considering ways to redesign the high school experience, we visited a number of exemplar schools, one in particular that was using a single lunch period very effectively. Some of you may be familiar with the idea of the power hour. That's another term that some folks use for one lunch. It's a 60-minute period of time where lunch is available to students all at the same time. Also in the spring of 2017, Kellam High School successfully used one lunch during the SOL testing period to close the year. In the fall of this school year, 2017, all of our high schools sent teams to the exemplar school outside of Richmond to take a look at their model and see it firsthand. We also included members of our operation team to take a look at some of the nuances and logistics around the one lunch schedule. I will tell you that over the course of the fall, there were extensive principal and leadership team dialogues regarding the model and the potential positive impact for students. In January through May, all high schools experimented with some form of the one lunch scenario. We conducted a large-scale field test the last full week of April to the first full week of May. So it's April 23rd to May 4th. We're here tonight to give you an update on that model and look forward in the coming school year to continue experimenting to best meet the needs of all students. You may recall this visual from a presentation in November when we were describing the innovative programming that was taking place at Green Run High School through the iLab. While today's presentation focuses specifically on one lunch, I want to remind the school board that there are a number of innovative practices our high schools are experimenting with to help ensure our students are absolutely prepared for life after high school graduation. On the slide before you, we'll see a number of graphic representations for the work of Virginia Beach City Public Schools. The strategic framework, Compass to 2020, including our core values, the teaching and learning framework, and then the dispositions related to transformational learning. Of course, the graduate profile is in there as well. The concepts and philosophies within these items have served to ground and guide the work of high school principals and their staffs during the last several years, as we have sought to challenge our thinking around the high school experience. Indeed, this has been a focus for area school divisions around the Commonwealth and throughout the country. While the typical high school experience may work for some students, it's clear that our current model does not work for all students. And since the 2015-16 school year, high school leaders have been meeting, visioning, and working with their respective communities to better understand what in fact is needed. These dialogue sessions led to the formulation of smaller work groups, visits by school-based teams to other high schools around the Commonwealth, and earnest internal school conversations to include the principal, admin team, teacher leaders, and importantly, student voice. Please know that this effort started with building internal capacity at the school level with ongoing support provided by central leadership. There has not been a top-down approach to this work, as each of our schools is unique and each has different challenges. There have been consistent and recurring conversations amongst the high school principals on how best to move these concepts forward. Using Compass 2020, specifically Goal 1, high academic expectations, Goal 2, multiple pathways, and Goal 3, social and emotional development, along with the graduate profile, the principals have explored several redesign efforts. As a reminder, each of our high schools has currently using an advisory period. 11 of those were commonly scheduled over the course of the school year. In our research on rethinking the high school experience, we found that many schools are turning to advisory periods and mentoring programs as ways to ensure that each student is known well by at least one adult in the building, an adult to whom the student can turn to help with both school and personal related issues. In a similar fashion, all of our high schools have experimented with daily schedules that provide for the better use of time. Specifically, we have tested the idea called One Lunch, which we discovered from that exemplar school, Deep Run, outside of Richmond. The concept allows for an extended lunch period of all students during which they can receive additional academic assistance, attend a club meeting, meet with a school counselor, take a makeup assessment, visit the library media center, simply walk around the building, and in some cases do homework. Each of our high schools took a team to Deep Run, as I mentioned, to better understand the logistics. As you are aware, our current framework seeks to place students at the center of the learning process and reimagining their role in it. Compass to 2020 calls for developing a plan for personalized learning that provides all students with interest-based, flexible, student-directed learning opportunities. Student agency and voice are central to the One Lunch concept. We seek to equip and empower students to make meaningful choices and take purposeful action to support their own learning through the options provided. As we continue to foster understanding around transformational leadership, innovative practices like One Lunch help push our thinking on best and most effective methods for restructuring or currently structuring the school day, and in doing so in a way that is most meaningful for students. In the shared leadership model our principals have employed, they are engaging the school community in a strategic manner to share in the learning, thinking, and decision making. One Lunch is in the iteration stage, and I am incredibly proud of the schools for their work around exploring this model and the option to better serve our students during the day. Let me show you briefly the current lunch schedule, just to remind you if you are not familiar with what that schedule looks like. This is the 4 by 30-minute lunch period that I talked about. As you'll note in blue, lunch 3-1 runs from 10:25 to 10:55. That particular, if you are assigned in lunch 1, your class would then run from 11 to 12:35. If you're assigned to lunch 2, your class runs for 30 minutes, and then you have a lunch period from 11 to 11:30, coming back to class for the last 65 minutes. Similarly with lunch 3, you have class for an hour, you go to lunch for 30 minutes, you come back for 30 for class. And then if you have lunch 4, which many people really want,
Yes.
you would have class up until about 12:05 and then lunch at the end. During those periods of time, teachers are not meeting with students necessarily to remediate. Students are generally all in the cafeteria, and there is not much flexibility in terms of other things occurring during that time frame. The typical One Lunch schedule, and I will tell you that we have looked at whether or not the lunch should occur after second block or after third block, and there are different scenarios, pluses and minuses, based on where that One Lunch is placed. But the one that we field tested across 9 schools in April and May is the one that occurred after third block, with first, second, and third occurring between 7:20 and 11:50, lunch happening for 50 minutes, and then finishing the day from 12:45 to 2:10. I think there has been some question in terms of, well gosh, what are schools doing to plan for that period of time? And in front of you is a snapshot of some of that planning. Some of it may be hard to read. I'm happy to give you specific copies of these documents. The blue document up in the upper right-hand part of the screen are the academic office hours that are offered at Lambstown High School, broken up by course, broken up by day, broken up by the first part of One Lunch or the second part of One Lunch. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see information from Salem High School and Green Run High School with regard to their rotations when office hours were available or help sessions were available. And finally, in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you see the floor plan for Lambstown High School. With, on my screen, there are red numbers, but those red numbers indicating where staff members are assigned to provide additional coverage throughout the building to ensure safety and security. The point behind this, and like I said, I'd be happy to give you specific documents for each of the buildings that have field tested it, but an extensive amount of administrative, instructional leadership team, and teacher planning went into structuring the time for students and staff to ensure that it was valuable. I think anytime you're trying out a new idea, you're going to find some successes and you're going to find some challenges. And before you are some of the successes and challenges that we have discovered over the course of the last year in giving this a try. And I'll start on the challenges side first. We'll finish this on successes, and then we'll pass it on to the other schools. There have been, operational concerns with regard to meal service, food service, cleanup, and student seating. Food services is an integral part of the lunch program for sure. And standing in line for an extended period of time or the number of meals that are able to be served are something that need to be taken into consideration. As an example of thinking through how to work through some of those challenges, Bayside High School, which field tested the program, saw an increase of about 90 or 95 meals in the second week of the program based on a different way that they went about ensuring that students had access to food carts. There are ways to work through those challenges, and it takes some time in order to make that happen. Similarly, there were some concerns that were brought forward about making sure the building stayed clean. Depending upon with whom you speak, the custodians love the idea, or the custodians don't like the idea. And I find that sometimes I get different answers from the same person that I'm talking to, based on the conversation. But ultimately, one of our goals is to ensure that the entire staff is supportive of the idea based on how we go about structuring it. I find that our students who are participating in the program take ownership and pride in the building and want things to remain clean as well. There have certainly been some challenges around the perceptions with safety and security. And let me tell you that the safety and security of our students is preeminent. It's the number one priority. During the course of the One Lunch 2-week field test, we didn't see a significant or even moderate increase in student discipline issues. And I bring that forward to potentially suggest that simply because students have a little bit more time to make decisions on their own does not mean they're going to make poor decisions. In those cases where students make poor decisions, whether it be during one lunch or whether it be in the cafeteria during the regular lunch, our administrators are there to address the situation and help correct it. Additionally, I would say during the one lunch scenario with regard to security, it's an all hands on deck with staff. That folks are assigned to hallways, to doorways, to just about every entrance to ensure that there are eyes on what's happening. And part of the planning process for administrators is to ensure that occurs. And then finally, a challenge that we've experienced is this idea that change is difficult. And it certainly is difficult. And change is something that takes it requires consistent focus on improvement. And how do we get better? And how do we continue to utilize the different features of a schedule to best meet student needs? The successes are actually more exciting to talk about, frankly. And we have found a significant number of students taking advantage of office hours and tutoring during the day. You're going to hear from some students today, and I would assume, I'm not programming your speech to talk about what you're going to talk about, but I'm sure they're going to talk about how they utilize that time to best meet their own personal needs. There is a sense or sentiment from many of our faculty members that options during one lunch give them a chance to have conversations with students in a less formal setting, thereby building relationships. We have a fair amount of common planning that's built into our master schedule now. Utilization of one lunch allows for that to occur for all staff members across all content areas if programmed appropriately. So those are some of the successes that we found. As I transition, I'm going to turn the podium over to Dr. Askew and her team from Lansdowne. Dr. Askew will be followed by Dr. Smith, and then Matt Delaney will close us out, and then we'd be happy to answer some questions. Dr. Askew?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Anderson, Vice Chair McDonald, Dr. Spence, and school board members. After visiting Deep Run High School to observe their One Lunch in action, a committee of Lansdowne High School staff members met to discuss the merits of this innovative practice and the possibility of bringing this concept to our school. The committee planned over the course of several weeks, sought staff input, and we rolled out a one lunch trial period with the start of the second semester. While originally slated to last only 2 weeks, our initial trial period was so successful that we extended it for a total of 5 weeks. When we ended the trial period, there was an overwhelming input from students and staff begging me to bring one lunch back. Over the course of the next 4 weeks, we garnered input from students and staff for ways to improve our one lunch processes. We felt very strongly that student voice and ownership of this practice were vital if and when we returned to a one lunch schedule. Lansdowne High School joined the other high schools for another 2-week trial period at the end of April. Not only were we again successful in our relaunch of One Lunch, but with the added input from our students and staff, our program continues to improve daily. Our plans are to finish this school year with the One Lunch schedule. I'd like for you to hear from 2 of our teachers on their experiences with One Lunch at Lansdowne High School. First is Mrs. Casey Daniel from our science department, followed by Dr. Jim Barger of our Technology and Governor's STEM Academy. Casey?
Thank you. I was fortunate enough to be a part of the team that went to Deep Run High School in the fall, and I came back so incredibly energized and wanted to tell everybody in my department and school, oh my gosh, you have to see this. This is incredible. It had a collegiate feel. Kids did the right thing. There was a little bit of a learning curve, they told us and shared with us, but it was just an overwhelming good feeling in that building. And theirs was 65 minutes, and we spent that whole 65 minutes, I talked to students. The only comments I got, what do you like, what do you dislike? Oh, the bathrooms can be congested. The lunch lines, I was concerned. We were all concerned. How do you feed 2,200 kids in our big school? But just like anything, they realized pretty quickly to not all go eat right away. And I think they worked in the first couple weeks, the freshmen get out 5 minutes earlier. Let's get them to the lunch lines and let them get fed. But again, I think there's a little bit of, that learning where they didn't all rush. I'll never forget the first day we did it at Lansdowne. I happened to be on the second floor, and everybody there, we only opened the main stairwell. And I walked out of my room and just watched and went, oh my gosh, how are they all going to get down? And some of my kids were looking at me like, help, Miss Daniel. That worked itself out in no time at all. We just had to figure out, okay, we need to do this differently. Again, we worked out the kinks. For me personally, we set aside 1 day a week, as you heard Mr. Keever say, for tutoring. Science happens to be on Wednesdays, but that wasn't enough for me. Kids wanted to come in and hang out. So I said, all right, I share my room with somebody. I need to come up with a schedule to post outside my door. Monday is going to be, I need the first half to go eat, then I'll be in here open second half. Tuesday, I'm open all block. Wednesday, I have tutoring officially. Thursday is duty day, sorry, closed for business. Friday, I'm open, Fun Friday. So posting that outside the door really helped to allow the kids to be able to say, okay, I can come in here. And I've got kids in there, I'll be honest, that aren't even mine. And it's kind of neat. I say, oh, hi. And they're like, is this open? Sure, come on in. And so we eat lunch, and again, that less formal setting really, really meets the social and emotional needs. You get to really form those relationships. So I could go on forever, but I will pass the baton. I'm a big proponent.
Thanks, Stephanie. Wow, how do you follow that, right? I'm Dr. Jim Barger. I'm one of the STEM Academy teachers. I teach robotics under the stairs at Lansdowne High School. To be honest, I was not part of the team that went to Deep Run, and going into this one lunch activity, I was a little leery. I had never seen anything like that. But I'm here to tell you I'm a proponent of it now. Within the engineering department, which is under CTE, we took a little bit different tact. We opened our labs up for students to come in and receive tutoring towards their certification process, be that AutoCAD or whether that was through their Arduino programming, whatever the topic might be. We had students coming in who had never been in our classrooms before, similar to what Cassie said, hey, is it okay if we come in? Myself, I had an experience with some of my students that can tend to be a little standoffish because they don't socially interact well, wanting to know if they could come into my room and eat lunch. Sure, come on in. And then they found each other and started talking to where now they run in a crew. We have, within the engineering department, we have various different competitions that we do, anything from TSA to our solar team, to our Mod Sim program. We started scheduling those teams to come in and work during the one lunch period, so it wouldn't conflict with some of the other activities they have after school. That's worked well. That's worked also very well. I think the idea of putting all these kids all over the building can be scary for a lot of people, but I think if you give the kids credit, they work it out. They figure out what they need to do and when they need to do it, how they need to do it. Some of them are doing academic counseling. Some of them are working together in corners of the building, prepping for an SOL test or prepping for a physics test. So they, left to their own devices, I'm sure we've had some problems that our administration has handled very well. But overall, I think it's been a very good experience, and hopefully we will continue it.
All right. Well, good evening. It's my pleasure to be here with you to talk a little bit about some of the experiences at Kellam High School around One Lunch. At Kellam, our journey with One Lunch began last March when a team of teachers and staff from our school visited Deep Run High School in Henrico County. It was a comprehensive high school similar in size to learn more about some of their innovative practices around to reimagine the high school experience. Our teachers did come back very excited and amazed about the potential of One Lunch and its incredible opportunities for our students and staff. Since last spring, we've operated on a One Lunch schedule many times and have learned many valuable lessons. Throughout the process, we have consistently solicited and utilized feedback from our students and staff. Just a few examples, last year we collected feedback from our students through live polls stationed throughout the building, and staff were surveyed about their feedback around One Lunch. We utilized One Lunch last year during the entire SOL period. We found that it gave us more instructional time in classroom when that third block was distributed over all class periods. One Lunch was also a topic of conversation during our instructional leadership team retreat with over 30 of our staff members. The group unanimously supported One Lunch and asked that our school continue to provide this opportunity at least 26 times in the current school year. As we offered One Lunch only a few times per month, it remained an event and not as a regular part of our school's culture. Our staff and students said we need to offer this on a more consistent basis. And over the past 4 weeks, since April 23rd, we've seen students and staff become more familiar and accustomed to the One Lunch schedule. There's so many opportunities and possibilities, and we're learning how to best leverage the support students need based on their individual needs. I can tell you just last week, our Principals Advisory Committee, our PAC, unanimously supported using One Lunch on a daily occurrence next year. They discussed the saving of instructional time, opportunities for common planning, meeting with students, and targeted student support as a rationale for this shift. Based on student and staff feedback, we continue to make adjustments, and we're continuing to optimize all the benefits that this schedule has to offer. As a part of our learning and growth process, our Student Advisory Council, that's made up of 36 student representatives of our student body, has embraced the One Lunch concept, and they've actually developed a work group that has begun to think about what are some of the other areas that we can realize potential with One Lunch. 3 of the members of our Student Advisory Council are here with us this afternoon to share their perspective. Sarah Borkowski and Kylie Snyder are seniors and members of our Student Advisory Council and members of our One Lunch work group. Sarah also serves as the chair of our Student Advisory Council. Ireland Miller is a junior and a member of our Student Advisory Council, and while her work within our Student Advisory Council has been focused on our advisory program, she's passionate about the opportunities provided during One Lunch, which she'll share in just a moment. But before I ask these 3 students to share, I wanted you to know about 2 students that were unable to join us this afternoon. Knowing that I would speak with you today, on Friday afternoon, I was walking through a learning community and sat down with 2 juniors that were doing some work. We began to talk about One Lunch, and I asked them to share their perspective with you. They were excited to attend. However, yesterday they informed me that they could not get off their work shift, but they did put together some comments that they asked that I share with you. I've taken a few quotes from their comments that they shared with me and tried to capture them on the slide here. So this time I'll ask Kylie Snyder, a senior at Kellam High School, to come and share some of her perspective around One Lunch.
Thank you. As he said, I am a part of the One Lunch work group that is a part of the Student Advisory Council. And this year, at the beginning of the year, when I joined the group, we talked about the advantages of having One Lunch and decided to create some ideas and goals for the year that we wanted to work on and have so that next year students could it would be easier for these students. Some of our ideas included main events that would be during lunch so that students could not only find friends and have something to do, but also kind of cut back on the number of students in the halls just kind of sitting around, and that allowed for better focus for security so that students are in one area, they're better able to be watched. And some of those ideas we kind of thought about and have been developing this year are like teacher karaoke, which was a main event that we had last year that was a big hit with students and was asked to come back this year. And while we also, like, main events are fun, we've also come up with ideas that are beneficial for students in studying and AP, SOL, or even SAT prep. There are classes after school or discussions that students have had with us as in the group that they are not able to attend these SOL, AP, or SAT prep classes because they are unable to remain after school. They don't have rides home or have to work. And we've seen that they've asked to have during the lunch, they can now go to these meetings and actually spend time and have seen that it has become they have more time to study. Another thing that we've had an idea this year and kind of worked on was a schedule for clubs to follow so that students could become more involved. If they could not stay after school, they refrained from being able to be in clubs, but during lunch having that time to meet with their clubs, we've seen an increase in club involvement and sport involvement because this year Sarah and I are both part of the swim and dive team. We were seniors and have been on the team for 4 years, and this year our interest meeting was met during lunch, and we actually had so many students there was no room in the classroom at the interest meeting. So, and that also resulted in having over 60 students try out for the swim and dive team, and it is the most we've seen in quite a few years. So it was the number of students that came to that meeting were actually able to find out information and say that they wanted to try out. Again, with the office hours, the schedule for teachers to follow has been good for students to go and make up work, and even just like not being able to stay after, or they'd like to go home. I know many of my friends are happy to be able to leave at the end of the day, but have to stay after to make up tests or quizzes, and now they are able to stay after. Some of our goals throughout the year, again with the main events, we're having little events throughout like the month, and then having one main event so that students can. It's kind of exciting. They're excited for the one lunch, and again with the schedule having no overlapping for clubs. That way, students can involve themselves in multiple clubs rather than having to give up one that they're interested in or not. So, I'm gonna hand off to Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm the president of the Student Advisory Council, and I also worked on the One Lunch Committee. So while these were ideas and goals, we also have implemented things, so it's not like we're just talking about things, we are implementing some things. So our school is made up of, there are different hallways, so there's A1, A2, B1, B2, and so forth. So we realized that A2 and C2 are less congested, so we have made C2 hallway a quiet zone, and we have it monitored, but it is still kind of loud, and it is, since it's the first year, it's not been officially said like, hey, this is the quiet zone, but we try to keep it monitored. So that is been implemented. We have had our office hour schedule. We're going to change the name because some students are kind of, they don't understand office hour, thinking that like their teachers are away, but now this is for them to go to their teachers and receive tutoring and have that access, that easy access. And then we have implemented the club schedule. It's a rough draft, but we have decided to have bigger clubs on certain days of the month, and then the smaller clubs would kind of file in around it. And then one day would be for sports club interest meetings. So there wouldn't be overlapping clubs, and like Kylie stated, we notice that when the clubs are there for them, students feel more comfortable to come with their friends, so they try out for more things because it is accessible to them and they don't have to stay after school and go alone and try to find a ride. And then finally we have a halfway bell. So since it is a lengthy period, sometimes club meetings will be during the second half of lunch, so we have a halfway bell to notify students, hey, it's been 25 minutes, so maybe you want to work on something different, or do you want to go to a different club meeting, that we have that accessible to them.
My name's Ireland Miller, and I wasn't necessarily on the group for One Lunch, but I still wanted to share my genuine opinion and my support for this program. There, of course, is a learning curve just because we went from not having it very consistent to having it every single day. But at the basis, it's an amazing program for students to become more on the educational sense and also in the social sense, to become more involved in the school. Just today, for the first half of One Lunch, I had an S2S meeting, which also has a buddy program. So we partner up with different military students, since this is a heavily military prominent area, that we want to pair up with different military students and be able to communicate them for their transition to the school to be more to flow better, and that it coincides with One Lunch, is that we're able to meet with different students during One Lunch, since it is one bell that we all share together. And also a lot of other clubs and teachers have taken upon themselves to do kind of a no night eats alone. And that also is an amazing program where we can have ping pong tables come into different classrooms for 15 minutes where students can just sit and talk to their teachers. And then afterwards, I was able to do test corrections for one of my classes. And then the last 10 or 15 minutes, I was able just to sit down and enjoy my lunch before I headed off to another AP class. So it's a nice break in between different vigorous classes. I'm also really involved after school and with different clubs and also playing sports. It is really hard to try to balance my schedule from after school, because you don't want to be staying till 5 o'clock going to different meetings, or sometimes you have to make some compromises. But with One Lunch, you're able to plan different meetings so it doesn't have to overlap too much, that you're able to compromise and manage your time well. And also, it's a really great opportunity for students to be more independent in this 15 minutes, that they're able to make their own choices. And this is showing students what it's going to be like when they go off to college, or even post-college, or whatever they do after high school, is that they're going to have to become more independent and learn what their responsibilities are and how they're going to have to take care of that within the 50 minutes.
So the last thing that I would just say to sum up comments from Callum is that it's been a learning experience for us. This idea of innovation is messy, but we've learned, and I feel like we've done a really nice job of modeling the process of making mistakes, learning from them, listening, getting feedback, and making it better. So overall, it's been a great process for us. Thanks.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about One Lunch at Salem, and I'll be summarizing a little bit of the things they've spoken about. Mr. Kiever challenged us to implement One Lunch on the high school level. We did do the visit at Deep Run, and I was apprehensive when I initially went there. My first concern was, how are they maintaining security? And in a conversation with the principal, within 2 minutes, I recognized exactly how they were going to do that, and he alleviated that concern. So I was excited about the challenge that Mr. Kiever put out, but anybody that knows me as a principal, I'm always leery of change during the school year. So I'm one that's always a little bit apprehensive. So we planned pretty heavily for it. We included teachers and students in the conversation. I met with cafeteria staff, custodial staff. We probably had 2 training sessions with teachers. During advisory, we had messages to students about the expectations on those days. Initial implementation with One Lunch was during our advisory days. We also included in the 2 C days we had on the high school level and we did it on the 2 writing SOL days. So we had 2 one lunches prior to the 2-week period that was done by all high schools, but we had only done a back-to-back session one time. So we were really looking forward to that 2-week period. But this provided us time to kind of look at our processes and procedures, meet with custodial staff, meet with cafeteria, make adjustments, talk to students, make adjustments. So for example, after the first session, I purchased several tables and chairs that were very lightweight, easy to put up and down for students to have a place to sit. So if you were to walk into Salem today, prior to one lunch, you'd see those all being set up around the building for students to have access to. This increased those opportunities. Personally, I was a very strong advocate for those 2 weeks from April 23rd to May 4th, even when this started, because I saw it as an opportune time for SOL tutoring and AP tutoring. And this was the time we could really tap into that opportunity for kids. If you talk to teachers, they normally will say, students won't stay after school. So I said, this is the time where we will get that opportunity. During that 2 weeks, I asked teachers to record the number of students that were in their classroom for those sessions. At the end of those 2 weeks, approximately 5,553 Salem students were in a classroom or in the library. So that to me says 2 things. I saw that as an indicator that they were either receiving tutoring assistance or they just found a place to bond with an adult or connect with another adult in the building. It was my intention to return to the normal schedule after that 2-week period, but I consulted with my teacher leaders and they were unanimous to continue on. There was not one person in dissent. So we went through that period through SOL testing. We're going to do that. Candidly, in my 6 years as a principal, the One Lunch program is the first time I've seen this level of consensus of approval from teachers and students at the same time. I've never seen that happen, particularly when you've done this change during the school year. Has it been embraced this quickly? I've never seen that occur, and that was really something that has stood out to me. And I don't think we've tapped into the potential of One Lunch yet. I met with some student leaders, and they said to me, Mr. Delaney, if we have One Lunch next year, we'd like to set up a mentor program. And I said, well, talk to me about that. Student need math assistance. We have students on call during that One Lunch office hour where they come on site and they meet with that student and provide one-to-one assistance. That was a suggestion from students that I thought would be extremely powerful. I'd like to just take a brief moment to share a video message from students and teachers. I thought it was important for you to kind of hear the noise of One Lunch and kind of see the activity that goes on during that time.
How do you like One Lunch?
We cut that out because she said lunch line for too long.
I'm sorry,
She does say
question,
that.
what grade are we in? Ninth grade, okay. How do you like One Lunch?
It's fun. You get to go to your classes when you need to, finish up your work, maybe do a test or something, and you get to hang out with your friends. But the lines are sometimes too long.
Yeah, but if you wait just a couple minutes, it will be really short and you'll go fast.
And I see you guys were able to get some lunch today in the line. Yeah, okay.
I'm bad at my lunch.
You brought it.
I enjoy One Lunch because I take a lot of advanced classes and AP courses, so they assign a lot of quizzes and tests and different assignments, and sometimes it's hard to get it done in a certain amount of time, but One Lunch gives me a chance to go to my teachers, ask questions, and actually get more information on that certain assignment. Plus, it gives me, if I do have free time, it gives me time to socialize with my friends.
Makes it go by faster. Yeah, honestly. Yeah.
They're behind, which a few of them are doing, and also just get to know them on a different level that I didn't when I didn't have time to talk to them as people outside the academic time.
Do you all like One Lunch?
Yes!
Also, I like One Lunch because I feel that there's no interruption in our classes, specifically during third block, where we would start a class and stop a class, and in there for having to regroup students back after coming back from the cafeteria. So those are the reasons why I like home lunch, and I think it's a great benefit for students and staff alike, because I teach these classes, so I have a little bit of extra time to get some things done during the day that frees up some time.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. At this time, I'll invite the principals and their teams back up. We'll be happy to answer questions, take comments. Or
That's why you call them.
I'll start it off. How about, do you have any trouble with teachers getting their 30 minutes of lunch in? Or have you had any teachers talking about, I didn't get my 30 minutes of lunch? For some reason, I've heard complaints about that, so.
I have received 0 negative comments or concerns from teachers through this entire process. But to give you an example of a math teacher this week at Salem High School, on Monday had planning, on Tuesday had office hours, on Wednesday had a duty, Thursday planning again, Friday office hours. Their duty is for 20 minutes, and then they shift out of that duty. Their office hours are typically at Salem 25 minutes, but what they will tell you is they have a really hard time of asking kids to leave their room, and they found that time valuable that they've captured kids there. But at Salem High School, I've not had any teacher bring any concern forward of that, and we've asked that question several times.
Okay. Ms. Melnick?
I can
go ahead.
address that as well. Being basically in the center of the building, I have kids going by me all day long. During one lunch, it's kind of morphed from where I had my half-hour lunch at the beginning, but now I end up with a crew of kids who eat lunch with me, and we're talking about everything from what they're going to do after that evening to graduation to what colleges they want to go to. So I'd rather do that than have my free 30 minutes.
Okay. Ms. Melnick?
So, Mrs. Holtz, do you remember the day we were at Kellum,
Yes.
the League of Women Voters, and we saw One Lunch in action? And I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised at the amount of students in the cafeteria. I thought it was going to be mayhem, and the lines are not long. There were empty tables. I was really surprised, but I have kids at Kellum, so they've been doing One Lunch since last March, and so I cannot let my own inclinations trump those of our citizens who have a lot of concerns, mainly about safety. And so in today's culture, this is where we are. And so I need a few questions answered, like, do we have teachers on duty at every exit of the building during that 50-minute lunchtime? Because we, as a board, we get a lot of phone calls, we get a lot of emails. I'm hearing at one school that kids are having food delivered and they're meeting delivery guys at the back door and these doors are opening. True or not true, it's what we hear. And so are there teachers that have duty? I know one school in particular has 24 exterior doors. Is that part of the plan? And how about, I have a list. I've talked to hundreds of people over a year. So how is it okay that students are not accounted for? So if a parent walked in the door and said, we have a family emergency, we have to leave right now, I need my child. Well, we know that child's not in, a classroom. Where is that child? And can we find them quickly?
Could we do question 1 first?
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
Because if we get down to question 10 or 12, I want to give
No,
folks.
I won't ask you.
Okay.
But
Let's talk about the safety and security piece. We can either do it from a teacher perspective, principal perspective, doors covered, exterior, doors covered, entrances. Dr. Askew?
If you look at the graphic that Mr. Keever shared with you, we do have staff members who are at every exit. It could be security, it could be an administrator, it could be a teacher, and I'll just let them tell you about their perspective.
We walked the building. I was part of the One Lunch Committee, and we walked the building and looked and took a map with us and said, okay, made exits. These are where we need people at every one of these locations to ensure safety. And so we worked it out that we all have a 25-minute duty. And everyone you show up when it's your time and everything is
So you sit
covered.
in a desk by the door for 25 minutes?
Well, I'm at the main, but yeah, you not necessarily sit at a desk, but you're right there in front of
You
that
are
door.
right there by the door.
Most of
Okay.
the people are walking, back and forth, talking
Yeah.
to kids going
Okay.
by. It's
Okay, so but a delivery guy's not gonna come to the door?
absolutely
Okay.
That's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah.
At least from my perspective, my duty station at the beginning of our one lunch trial was upstairs in the second floor hallway, all the way in the back stairwell.
Okay.
That was my job, was to monitor the stairwell. There were enough conversations in our building about security and location of where the teachers should be that came from the teachers to our administration, that when we went into the trial period where everybody went into, we adjusted. Teachers were allowed to identify where places were that needed to be covered. And at that point in time, I moved downstairs to what we call the senior exit, goes out towards the student parking lot. And we have seniors who, of course, during that one lunch period, leave because that's their normal time to leave because they have early release. They still have to show their pass to me as they exit. So I'm pretty confident from my viewpoint that as far as at least at Lansdowne, we've adjusted and we've got a good situation on those exit doors to where I don't have that concern.
How do you know they're a senior? Sorry, I had to stick that in there.
Yeah, no.
When they walk up to me, they're issued, if they have early release, they have a pass that they have to show me before I let them exit the building.
Does it have their picture on it? Do you know it's them? Do you know it's the person that has that pass?
I can talk
If
from.
you don't know the
Yeah,
kids, do you
yeah.
know it's them?
Well, we did it, and we do not have a picture at Salem, but what we did was we had a meeting with those seniors as we called them up to get that pass. To answer the question, there is not a picture on that pass. We feel pretty confident, again, that students will make the right choice. But we
Would that be hard to do?
Well, it's been something that's popped up several times during, for example, the community meetings with the Blue Ribbon Panel. I think it's something that we'll talk about. There's a lot of things we could do with student IDs. There's pros and cons to student IDs, probably more pros than cons. And I think it's likely a direction we'll head in, but there's other things you can do with them other than just have an ID.
Or maybe even an alphabetical list for every teacher that has that's like the senior exit, of the seniors.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just,
There's ways we can
sorry, I
tackle
just
it.
thought that,
Sure.
wanted to go in with that one.
You bring up a good point, but at least from my perspective, again, as those students come up, maybe the first time I don't know them and I'm identifying with their badge or with their pass, but after a week or two, I'm recognizing the students and I'm actually getting to know who they are. So that's a trade-off.
Well, and I would tell you, so at Kellum, that they do leave, seniors get to leave. We catch them, so if they have a 4th block and they're not in their class, we know who they are. There's only one unlocked door, they have to come back in through that door. And so when we originally did it last year, we did have some students that thought they could leave and come back. We met with them, we said, here's the expectation, and we have not had issues with that. So, they can't leave and then come back. If they leave when they're not supposed to, then they'll be cutting class. And so we're able to address it from that realm.
Let me also say that on our regular lunch schedule, at the end of the 3rd lunch, when we transition to the 4th lunch, students with early release exit the building. And they don't necessarily all exit through the same exit. They exit through the building that's probably closest to where that 3rd block class is to get to the parking lot. And so, frankly, the system where they are exiting out through a specific door and going by a staff member on the one lunch piece is probably a stronger model in terms of safety and security. And the other thing that I want to point out is that through the one lunch piece, the number of staff members that are in the hallway and available as a visible presence for students is higher than at any other time during the day with the exception of arrival and dismissal, I think. And I think that also lends to this idea of providing additional adult presence. So I wanted to mention that. And I know Ms. Melnick had another question around student accountability and being able to.
You have to understand when we've been placed in this nationwide, everybody is very, very fearful right now. And so these are very valid concerns from the community. And so like I said, while I see this working brilliantly at Kellum, well, first of all, my oldest loves to leave at 11:50, but he does use that time and skip out on fourth block because he doesn't have a fourth block. But people are worried about that piece, and that is reality now. And so, these.
I think that's something that the group that wishes to continue on into 18-19 would continue to talk about. And I think would be enlightened by some of the information that comes forward from the Blue Ribbon panel over the course of the summer. What are some of the different process pieces that come out of that? One of the things that I found in talking with principals is that they are incredibly interested in ensuring safety and security in their buildings. They take it seriously and want to ensure that there's a safe environment.
So could you locate a student if you had to?
So we've been doing it since March, and so I haven't had a single issue with it. We've had whether it's an issue of a parent coming and saying, I've already texted my kid, they're on the way up. We've used the loudspeaker because you can still hear through the loudspeaker. We have security and staff all over, so you can call and say, hey, I know they're working with this teacher in this classroom. So we have not. It hasn't come up one time that we had an issue finding a student.
I will yield, but I'll have another question so you can.
Ms. Riggs, did you get your
No,
question
I
answered?
I just kinda piggybacked on that. So, Mr. Delaney, you said that when you went to visit Deep Run, and you were concerned with the safety thing too, and so when you went in there, your question was answered within a couple of minutes. How was it answered? What did
First,
they
my
do?
concern was 1,700 kids in the hall, which is what I hear from probably a lot of people's initial thought. And Ms. Melnick, we obviously feel that same way. It is. Before I answer your question, I will tell you the anxiety for me is highest during one lunch, and it's harder for us administratively. One lunch, it would be much easier to stay the other way, candidly. But my students and staff love it and are huge advocates for it. So I'm willing to go in that direction and deal with some of that stress around where are we with positioning, how are we making adjustments, meeting with security team more often and so forth. One was watching the Deep Run kids interact. And I said, those are Salem kids right there. That's the first thing I said. They're acting exactly as I would expect my Salem kids to do it. The principal there talked about their emergency plan that they have during one lunch, so we utilized that plan and have sent that out to our teachers around here's what we will do during these situations. We have not drilled it yet, but we've continually sent messages off to teachers. Here's what the expectation is if we have that occur. We saw the teachers walking around and where they were in duty stations. In Deep Run, I had maybe one security assistant, maybe two on staff. 2 security assistants. Well, we have many more than that. So I saw they don't have the security assistants talking to their teachers, saying they enjoy the duty. My teachers are the same way. You saw one of mine talk about the informal conversations they have with kids. That is the part that I did not plan for. The amount of engaging conversations I get to have with students and teachers do in a non-instructional evaluative environment, which really makes a happier kid when they go into that class, which they will tell me. Mr. Delaney, I like the relaxation. I go to 4th block, I'm ready. Teachers saying I'm seeing a decrease in cell phone usage during 4th block when they come back from one lunch. They're getting that stuff taken care of. They're sitting with that friend or they're engaging in that conversation. We're not having that distraction. So I went a little bit longer there, but that was what did it, just observing. If you ever meet Mr. Pritchett at Deep Run, security always is what he talks about first and foremost, whatever initiative he's talking about. He'll talk to me about the things he does from a safe school standpoint. And I knew our school was very similar layout, that we could implement that, and my teachers were on board with it.
There's a follow-up question to that with that security. Obviously, you said he had an emergency plan and you talked about it with your teachers. Is that something, because I know that's something that parents have asked about, and we probably did at the Blue Ribbon thing. Are there going to be drills during this time? Is it going to be an actual drill for the kids to know what to do and to practice it?
Well, I think you're tackling a broader issue about when and how we drill in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would prefer we wait and have some conversations with the Blue Ribbon panel when they come back and talk to us about best practices in that area.
Okay, all right. That's just the question I'm bringing up to. Yeah.
It's a good question. There's no doubt it's going to come back as a part of how we think about our protocols from the Blue Ribbon panel. But that's why we engage with the police department and the Association is to have them talk to us about, should we be doing it in the middle of the day with students there and all that stuff. And so we'll have better answers then.
And do you have ideas of how to handle the extra lunch load? I mean, are you going to, has that worked out? Are you
Today,
going to
at our
hire more workers in the cafeteria? How's that working?
I will tell you today at our one lunch, they were through the line in 20 minutes.
Okay.
Because the adjustments have been made and students are recognizing when they can come through. If you come at the start, you're gonna see a long line. But in 20 minutes, they're through that line, and that's come through a lot of conversations with my cafeteria manager, a lot of conversations about how we're running our lines, and kids, I think, figuring out when's the time to go and not go. And we've seen a decrease in that serving time throughout the 2-week period.
I heard somebody mention something about carts at lunch.
Yeah, so
What
I
did-
was at Bayside.
Hi.
So I was over at Bayside for one lunch one day. We were just walking. I was visiting kids, and all of our schools have moved towards a breakfast in the classroom model. And part of that is that there's kiosks in several of our schools throughout the building where students could just swing by, grab breakfast, and take it on their way from the buses to their classroom. So at Bayside, they were having a similar challenge at the beginning of it, and they elected to start bringing hot food out to the kiosks so that they were able to serve not just in the cafeteria lines, but around the building. And they had already sold out everything they'd brought out to the kiosks, so they were able to sell it in different. It's just thinking about how we do things a little bit differently than we have. And similar situation at the halfway bell at Bayside, there wasn't a kid in line in the cafeteria.
Ms. Weems?
Yeah, I had a safety question, the same one Ms. Melnick had, but and Trinace with the evacuation drills, and we'll look at that later. But as far as those in the cafeteria first, I'm assuming that it's okay with the fire marshal. I mean, we're not exceeding how many people can be in a cafeteria at once, are we, or anything?
No, because they're not all in the cafeteria.
Well, I know they're not all in there, but okay.
Right.
Okay, and then I guess this would be for the students, and you kind of said it too. So if it takes you 20-25 minutes to get through the line, and then you get your lunch, is that leaving you enough time to actually go and get tutoring? Because by the time you get through the line and get your lunch, with only 50 minutes, you're down to about 15 or 20 minutes. Is that enough time to actually get your tutoring done? Or your help, or your meeting? Or are you getting lunch and taking it to there?
I have definitely done, a lot of teachers allow us to sit and do the tutoring while eating. So I found that getting lunch and then going to teachers, I do have enough time to sit down, especially since a lot of times tutoring doesn't take that long. I'm either eating while I'm doing it or I do have enough time. So I personally know that I have, and I see some of my friends definitely do. I've even had time where I've done multiple things during lunch, had time to eat, and then also had time just to sit down and talk with my friends. So there is plenty of time. Sometimes I don't even know what to do with all the time.
Okay, because I know the school, you said they had a 65-minute lunch, and this is only 50. Yeah, so that seems like you would be squished for time to be able to do everything. And then just so if you're a senior, you can actually leave school at 11:50. You can be done for the day. Is that
If you
correct?
don't have a board.
Yeah. If you don't have to provide, I would imagine seniors would love this. Yes.
Oh, Andrew loves
Yes, I would love it.
Well, you gotta,
I would.
you gotta be in good standing, on track to
Yeah.
graduate, have a
Yeah.
2.0 or
Yeah.
higher, so there's
Yeah,
criteria.
and most of our kids do have a 2.0.
Ms. Manning?
Well, first of all, I love the advantages of this program, the students getting extra help, the activities, the clubs that you all mentioned. I think that's fantastic. My son loves One Lunch. He's in high school and he loves it. However, the concerns that Ms. Melnick and Ms. Riggs that we've raised around security are real. And I need to be comfortable that the advantages are outweighing those security risks. And so I guess to piggyback on what you guys said, not only on drills, but if there was an actual emergency, a fire, an intruder, whatever, how are we going to account for all of those students? How do we know that, little Johnny or big Johnny is in the school? Because he could be anywhere in the school and we're not able to account for that. So how are we addressing that?
Dan, you want to talk about the plans?
I can, or Dr. Smith, you want to start first?
Well, I think one thing that I think this has allowed us and helped us to look at is it's for us it hasn't really been just about one lunch. It's about any time we have all kids. So arrival, kids come in at 6:45. Though doesn't start till 7:20. So we've got time in there where we've got 2,000 kids in the building during every transition. So in one lunch being one of them. So it's helped us to really go back and make sure that we have clear and specific plans about what to do during any of those times, not just during one lunch. So that's how we've looked at it.
And during the current lunch schedule that we have now, at any given time, you've still got 500 kids in a similar situation. So it's not different.
Yeah.
Practicing those drills.
So I would like to hear more on the drills and that as well.
Yeah, I think we can dive into that. I'm a little reticent to have a public conversation about all of those plans. As
I
you might
understand that.
imagine.
Yep.
So I think, we could get
Okay.
with you individually and talk about some of those
Okay.
things.
And
But
then-
some of that is part of the learning process that we're going through with the Blue Ribbon panel as well, just revisiting all of those.
Okay, and then
protocols.
two other questions. I noticed some students eating on the floor. That seems a little unsanitary. It bothers me a little bit. Is that a usual practice? Can we get them some tables?
It's bothered some of my teachers as well. That was some feedback.
Yeah.
I will tell you though, Miss Manning, I bought those tables and some of them are empty.
Well,
yeah.
Maybe
Still like
that
that
means
floor.
people know sitting on the floor and eating your lunch. I mean, and that plays into my next question with the custodial staff. That's probably the next biggest concern I've heard from people is that it is causing a lot of extra work for the custodial staff or the teachers with wrappers and food being left throughout the school.
I mean, you can ask our principals, but we're just not hearing the same thing.
Can liners. I mean, I'll be candid. Initially, when we started this, there were some significant concerns around the number of can liners that we were using, number of trash bags, and the idea that cans were, this is getting down into the weeds, that cans were being dumped and they weren't really full, and so they were using more liners, and so this idea that we've actually had conversations amongst the head custodians around waiting until the can is full, then emptying it, and so you're not going through as many can liners. Additionally, students eating in the classroom, they were asked to bring their trash out into the big trash cans in the hallway versus leaving it in the classroom to make things easier in the afternoon shift change. So just about any concern that is brought forward, I think our principals are working, our custodians are working to try to reconfigure how that challenge could become solved and become a success.
Yeah, the flip side of that, and you guys could speak to this because I know you've heard the same comments I've heard when I've been in buildings talking to some of our custodians, is that they're saying it's better for them because they don't have to do 4 turnarounds. So the way it works now is, the kids walk in, 30 minutes later, they got to cruise through there and clean the entire cafeteria, get ready for the next set, and they got to do that 4 times in a row. And it's a lot of lifting on the part of our custodial teams to get those lunches cleared out every time. This is one time they're able to move through the building and get things done. So we just hear a little bit different feedback. I don't know if you can speak to the teachers maybe, but I'm sure that's just something we got to keep working on with the kids. Don't leave your wrappers in my classroom kind of conversations.
No, I've made announcements on 5 occasions just to those reminders. I'll tell you the big difference is for custodians and cafeteria staff, it is now a sprint versus the 2 hours. So it's changed their work rate for that 50 minutes. Before that was spread over that 2-hour period. So it is adjustment in terms of how the intensity is that once it's over to break up, clean things, and now you're done. Same with security. It's a more intense 50 minutes in terms of what they're used to, and so they have to just make that adjustment as teachers and administrators are all doing. So that may be it's just that change process that I think is there, but I have not seen any increase in trash issues. Because we've strategically stationed trash cans around the building and continually reminding students that it's their job to clean up after themselves.
And I think that was part of when we relaunched and we got a lot of student input and staff input. If there was concerns about any kind of trash, they identified that and they now police each other. The kids made a little video when we did our relaunch of all the things that they felt were important for students to remember. And we showed that before we relaunched, and that was one of them, that they needed to clean up after themselves, and they police each other very well, and we just don't would have that problem.
Well, I would think that would be an incentive. If you don't clean up yourself, this is not going to work.
They don't want to lose the privilege.
Right, and you may lose lunch if it gets out of hand.
The other thing I'd like to add about eating on the floor, we're taking, I mean, it's a process, but certainly removing lockers that aren't being used and having benches made. And we have benches strategically placed, and those benches fill up. And the kids were funny because one was placed outside of my room and it filled up. And they're like, Dr. Askin, we need another one over here. We need another one over here. So we're getting, I mean, that's, I think, part of the, if this were to continue. So I know we went to Deep Run, they spent some money buying some tables to put in places. So, but again, kids will choose sometimes to just pop on the floor. But I'm not seeing as many eating on the floor.
Mr. Edwards.
A couple things. The security thing, I've read the same emails. I've got the same concerns. I've talked to some people. And I've had the opportunity in 2 different high schools to watch One Lunch. And the tenor of some of the concerns that came in kind of fly in the face of individualized ownership of their own development, which is what Schoology is all about. This statement like, can you imagine the safety issues and overall concerns of 2,000 students moving about the building, doing their own thing? And I said, yeah. I'm excited how this fits in with this evolution of students reporting to school, not for the daily dose of education, but to go in there and to own their own development. And this just fits that like a glove, along with a lot of the curricular elements that are in process as well. And I'm excited. Yes, I'm sure the security things will get worked out. And I've shared with Dr. Spence, I don't want to bankrupt the Food Service Enterprise Fund. So, and I understand the data's not in there on yet, but we need to be mindful of, whatever we've done, we've got our prices already set for next year. And so I don't know how all this is going to work out, but it's, that data needs to be run and probably look at it over the summer.
Mrs. Holtz.
Thank you. I also observed that One Lunch at Kellam, and I was surprised because I thought the cafeteria was half empty because kids were everywhere. And I did have a concern about that, but I think you answered it here. And I think for the students, this is excellent, but I have a concern about teachers. And Miss Anderson alluded to it, because you mentioned it's only 50 minutes. There were teachers everywhere in the hallway. Well, they're not eating lunch. And I know when you roll out a new program, you bring the cheerleaders, and that's a good thing. But I just can't believe that every teacher has lunch. When I taught, I used my lunch to unwind. And I didn't want kids around me chatting with them. I mean, that was my time. And I also did work. I checked papers and stuff. And I see, in that area, I see teachers being shortchanged. And how do you deal with that?
Well, they still have their 90-minute planning every day, so that's one thing. But when we talked about the office hours and the duty, that was one duty per week. So it was only 25 minutes per week. And so when we did the math, teachers actually gained 50 minutes per week that they didn't have before the One Lunch.
Yeah, I mean, I've not heard anyone in my department or any colleague say, I don't feel like I'm getting time. Matter of fact, we all like, oh, thank goodness we have more time now. Because I can still do my duty. That halfway bell that rings, I know I've got to go, but I still have the first 25 minutes.
So when do you eat?
I eat during that first 25 minutes, or my choice too is often I will eat with the kids because I like to. But I don't have to either. And there's some colleagues certainly that don't want to eat maybe, but you have only one time a week that you have to do that 25-minute duty. So, and then one tutoring day for 25 minutes. So they're only really taking 50 minutes total during that whole week. And then the rest is yours.
When you say doing that duty, you mean that 50 minutes where the teachers are circulating in the hallway?
It's
You only have
25
that once a week?
For 25 minutes of the 50.
There's 2 shifts of duties, each One Lunch. So no teacher in my building, security does 50 minutes, administrators do 50 minutes. My student activities coordinator does 50 minutes, my teachers do 25 minutes, and then they rotate out. And Ms. Holtz, I would not be here if I felt like my teachers were not in firm belief of this. And in my conversations with them throughout the process, as I said, I was ready to stop and let them breathe, and they said, please don't do that. We want to continue, and I've not heard one concern around that, and I've asked repeatedly in surveys and conversations and so on.
All right, thank you.
Mrs. Rye?
It was just a quick comment. What spoke to me was the teacher comment about personal relationships, because I always feel, and I can speak a little from personal experience, always been a little envious, and I think other teachers as well, of those teachers who are coaches or club sponsors, whether it's theater or whatever. But the other classroom teachers, like I said, have always been a little envious of that other opportunity. They don't have to have that level of relationship with their students, and this does offer that to those who are there for the taking.
Thank you. Ms. Melnick, we're back to you.
Okay, this one, so obviously we have a learning curve and some growing pains, and we're gonna work through this, but Mr. Kiever, at the beginning of your introduction, you said, you used the word option. And so, is this an option? Will all schools participate in one lunch? Or are some schools not ready?
As of right now, not all schools are ready to do this full-time next year.
Okay.
And that's okay.
Okay. Because, okay, so, and that's why you pointed out that it took a long time for the block schedule to be fully implemented. That there were some schools that weren't ready for that either.
Right.
Okay.
And I think it'd be interesting if you attempted to undo block scheduling now.
Yeah.
But that would be an interesting conversation maybe for next year.
No, it wouldn't.
Thank you.
Ms. Riggs?
You might have said this, Daniel, in your presentation, and I don't remember if you did. How long has Deep Run been doing this one-month program?
Oh gosh.
Did you ask?
Well, yeah, we know, and it's going to escape me. I think they've been doing it for 4 or 5 years.
How many students do they have?
Just under 2,000. I think actually they're 1,750, 1,800. They're a class 5 school with BHSL.
Ms. Weems?
You said that, and that was my question, if this is going to be site-based, you said that some schools aren't ready. Why aren't they ready? Is it because their teachers don't embrace it as much? Do they have more challenges than these schools? We've got 3 schools that are, very gung-ho here,
Sure.
but some schools are not ready. Why? I mean, what are their reasons?
I think it varies, frankly. I think it varies in terms of sometimes it's going through the growing pains and process. Sometimes it's around how do we best bring our teachers and build capacity with our teachers around a particular topic. All the high schools went and visited Deep Run. All of the schools have tested it at some point. I don't think when you are initiating a form of change, do you insist that everybody do something if they're not fully on board and prepared to do it. So when given the option, I think it's okay to choose not to do something until you feel like it's something that we can embrace. So there are probably some specific rationale that each of the schools may give you, but I think it's around sort of the change process and understanding how that change process works within their building.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Felton?
Just like to say thank you for this presentation. It sort of kind of calmed down a lot of my nerves too, as far as security is concerned. I want to thank you for doing it. And Principal Delaney, you were one of the ones that I had extensive conversation with. We stood and we talked a long time. I want to appreciate your being very candid with me about your concerns in doing this. And today you spoke that as well. And you were basically, and maybe it was on your agenda, talked a lot about the custodian and cafeteria staff. And I know preparing for different areas and different schools have body of students, large or whatever, but what is a major change that the cafeteria staff had to do is for preparing food for a mass in a 1 hour? And what was the conversation that they had with you coming to the table talking about
Major
it?
changes, they had to talk to me more often than they were used to about the lunch process, I think was probably what they would say. So, but for example, we opened up our concession stand in our commons and used wraps and salads and kind of grabbed meals there. So that was an area where they were not used to sending a staff member to man that area to speed up a line. We had to talk about food options and what they were doing and how can we be more efficient around that process because they weren't used to that. Quite often there's days we run 4 lines and then there's days we run 3 lines. And so we have to kind of plan for that. So my cafeteria manager was out for a couple of days and she said, I'm going to be out these days and I'm going to have a substitute. So her and I met an administrator and talked about what are the choices where you're going to make those 2 days to ensure we're efficient with the staff that's going to be stressed without their manager there. I met with that group and cheered them up on saying, here's what we're going to do and how can we support you. I think they've ordered a couple new warmers. There's some other things they're looking at. I talked to her today about if you had it, what would be the most efficient way to provide quality food and get kids through the lines if you had your options. I said, I don't want an answer, but that's conversations we need to have around maintaining quality and the efficiency to feed them and not shortchanging it. There's work that's going to have to be done there, but I think it's extremely possible. And she's been invigorated by it as well.
Follow-up, Chair.
Go ahead.
I actually went to Tallwood and it dealt with the one lunch day with Principal Avila, but both of you talked about furniture, getting furniture, having to add furniture to your school, and that was a concern of mine. So I said, where are you getting the furniture from? Also, I had an opportunity to talk with the custodial people personnel that said that, you're right, Dr. Spence, they said it was great for that one rush going through, they could get everything done and didn't have to go back. But my concern is you and Principal Avila had to get furniture. So where did you get your furniture from to aid in your large numbers?
I think we got it from Sam's Club. I hate to say it. I don't want to lightweight, fold them out, big tables. I got bistro top tables, and then I got little 3 top tables. And we wanted to be able to put those down. I wanted them easy to break down and carry. And that is a challenge for my custodians where they're breaking down furniture more often, but it's light and we make sure we support it.
Yes, my second question. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So we have I think we're through with all the questions, but as you can see, we've had a lot of emails from our constituents and from teachers, and we've had a lot of concerns. So you all, I'm sorry to say you got the brunt of it today, but
If I could.
it sounds like there's a lot of positiveness coming from this, and once the kinks are worked out, hopefully we'll be able to move forward and it'll be something. But I just want to say that, I graduated a long time ago, and we just had one lunch, but we just called it lunch.
So I will say that there are several schools that are still utilizing the one lunch model up through the SOL testing window, and I would ask that if you're interested in going and taking a look, give me a call and I can set you up with a building or two to visit in the next 10 days or so that you have a sense of the way it looks and can kind of get a sense of how it feels as well. So please reach out and we can get that scheduled for you.
And I would balance that against the notion that change is change, and it would be really surprising if in the midst of change you didn't get a phone call or two. And I would weigh that against 67,000 students, parents, and 5,000 teachers and figure out, is this a lot, or are these a few people who are just kind of curious about how it's working? Our principals have put a lot of thought into this, and you've heard from our teachers, you've heard from our students, and these aren't the only proponents. I mean, you're hearing our teachers representing, they're not hearing the concerns that you're hearing. So I would just try to filter through some of the noise and figure out, is it really what is right for kids? And our principals undertook this with the intention of doing what is right for children and trying to understand how we can create a high school environment that allows for them to have more opportunities for remediation, enhancement, and socialization, all of which are good things. And I, like Daniel said, I'm proud of our principals for taking this on as an opportunity to do better by our kids. So thank you all for being here tonight.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I think you can do it in 10 minutes.
I don't know. I just asked.
So next we have an update on transportation. I don't want to rush you, but you think you can do it in about 10 minutes?
I had a speed reading class.
Okay.
This afternoon's presentation on updating on operations and transportation is focusing on the technologies we currently use, those we're looking at that hopefully start in the next school year, and just a small glimpse of something for the future. gotta work.
Uh-oh.
He said all I had to do was click.
There we
The
go.
first three on this slide are the ones we currently use: bus route planning, automotive vehicle location system, GPS, the bus driver mobile data terminal. The two we're looking at are Here Comes the Bus and stop arm cameras. Somebody needs to. Edulog is our computerized routing software that was installed in 1996. In fact, we were one of the first school divisions in the Commonwealth of Virginia to use this kind of technology to increase the efficiencies. The school bus routes are designed with optimum efficiency based on the actual student addresses that we download from our Synergy student information database. And they are designed within set parameters. For example, 0.3 of a mile from the address to the elementary school, from the address to the elementary school bus stop, and 0.5 of a mile from the secondary to a secondary school bus stop. It's a valuable resource for our office associates and supervisors in managing and reporting the school bus routes, the runs, the stops, and student information. It's also a valuable resource for our parents because we have on our internet site a program called Web Query that allows the parents to enter the address, their child's grade level, and they can receive the correct bus stop, the bus number, and the approximate arrival time at the stop. And as you know, the 2016 study by School Bus Consultants had some concerns that the operation was not fully utilizing all the capabilities of the Edulog program, and we have incorporated those recommendations, and we are now using those enhancements a lot more in our operation. Okay. Greg, can you do this one so we don't take all this? The automatic vehicle location system, or GPS, it was added to our technologies in 2004. Transportation staff members, both office associates and supervisors, can locate buses and track them in real time, and they can immediately respond to parents who call in wondering where the bus is and what time it's going to get to the bus stop. The program is integrated with Edulog routing system, so we can compare the details of the route as the driver actually drives the route versus what the optimization feature in Edulog designs. For example, the Edulog optimization feature may design a route over the shortest distance, but into a heavily trafficked area, causing the bus to run off schedule. So therefore, the bus driver may tweak that route and go a different route that may be longer, but take less time and get to the school on time. We can then make the revisions to the routing system to make sure all efficiencies are considered. The software also includes a module that allows the drivers to check the requirements of the pre- and post-trip inspection, and they can be easily electronically verified. The bus driver mobile data terminals are implemented in 2016. These are installed in the driver compartment, and as a safeguard, the tablets can only be accessed when the school bus is completely stopped. Any movement of the bus will deactivate the tablet. This is our time and attendance software that tracks actual work time based on the drivers logging in and logging out each time they do a route, a field trip, or an additional run. The reports available to the supervisors allow them to easily review and verify after work hours. The tablets and the Synovia program is capable of tracking the transportation needs of our special education population, our special needs students, for Medicaid reimbursement documentation. And it's also easily exported into the WISE payroll system. A program we're investigating for the fall, it's called the Here Comes the Bus. This is a Synovia product that allows parents to find the location of their child's bus by smartphone, tablet, or personal computer. The parents can receive a text message or an email alert notifying them when the bus enters a defined geofence around the child's school bus stop. They can then receive the expected arrival time of the bus and at the bus stop and at school in the morning and back at home in the afternoon. And of course, it's available in several languages. This offers numerous benefits to the parents. It's convenience for parents can track buses in live time. They will know when to leave the home in the morning to meet the bus and when to be at the bus stop in the afternoon to receive their children. It's a good safety program because on dark and inclement weather mornings, the parents and students can remain inside until they know the bus is arriving at the bus stop. And of course, satisfaction, parent concerns about the whereabouts of the school bus is eliminated, and parents are less likely to be interrupted at work from calls from the children regarding the school bus schedule. Currently, the students with cell phones may call the parent at work, letting them know the bus has not arrived and wondering what they should do. With this application, the student can locate the bus using that same cell phone and determine a course of action, possibly without interrupting the parent at work. There's also benefits to the school division. We can reduce idling time at bus stops waiting for late arriving students and increase the overall efficiency of the bus fleet to save fuel. Obviously, this technology provides a great service to parents and shows them our commitment to providing safety, communication, and convenience to them and their children. The privacy, the program requires a password that provides student and parent access only to the specific bus that serves their specific transportation needs. Our implementation overview is our goal to have this application available to parents and students during the first quarter of the coming year. Our proposed implementation schedule is dependent on successful collaboration and cooperation of several departments within the school division. We will begin immediately discussing the technology interactions of the Here Comes the Bus with the Synergy Student Information Database with the Office of Technology and school leadership to define the privacy policies and procedures for use with the parent notification application. Once we have established the necessary policies and processes to provide to the parents, the Synergy database can be uploaded into the EduLock routing software for the transportation supervisors to correct any outstanding issues. For example, address matches, school programs, and grade assignments. After the data is deemed accurate, we will conduct an internal test where our supervisors will use their own children, their grandchildren, or the family members to confirm the application is relaying accurate information. If that test proves successful, we will select a few schools to identify some PTA parents and our other volunteer staff members to use the application for their children. After the test and necessary revisions are completed, we'll then roll out the application to parents with a public relations campaign through the Department of Media and Communications through traditional and social media outlets. The second program we're looking at for September is the Stop Arm Camera. It's a program that's been around for several years. It's aimed at reducing the number of motors to pass a stop school bus loading or unloading students, much like the stoplight camera program that catches motorists running red lights. After many discussions with the Virginia Beach Police Department, the Virginia Beach Chief of Police and his stoplight camera staff agreed to partner with us in pursuing this technology. The VBPD will oversee the program and handle all communications between the camera vendor and the Virginia Beach Police Department. This is one of the few programs with no charge for equipment because the vendor recovers their costs from the fines collected. School division technicians will oversee the installation of the cameras, and they would like to start with up to 50 cameras in areas of high incidence. How does it work? The activation of the bus arm energizes the camera and the video that automatically detects a vehicle passing the stop school bus loading or discharging students. The images captured by the camera and video include the vehicle license plate, and the school bus extended stop arm that provides evidence of the violation. The violation data is sent wirelessly to the ATS computers through a secure virtual private network. The law requires that the review by a sworn police officer who approves or rejects the violation based on the images captured by the camera and the video. If the officer verifies the violation, the ATS staff mail a citation with an accompanying $250 fine to the owner of the vehicle. The initial step in the startup process for the use of the stop arm camera with the city is a city ordinance. It requires the use of stop arm cameras to record violations of the school bus stop law. The approval and subsequent installation and activation of the program should be available by September of 2018. The revenue generated by the citations will be collected by the Virginia Beach City Public Schools, with a defined percentage being paid to ATS for equipment and services. This percentage typically starts at 60-40, 60% for the ATS, 40% to the school division during the first years, and moving to a more equitable split as the capital improvement costs of the vendor are reduced. The school division will create a memorandum of understanding with the Virginia Beach Police Department to outline their specific duties and responsibilities in monitoring the program and to define the process to recover any cost they incur for monitoring the program. All revenue collected above and beyond the cost incurred by ATS and the Virginia Beach Police Department are recommended to be dedicated to school safety issues and needs. And a future option for consideration is a student tracking system. This student will require students to have an identification badge in order to scan on board the bus and to disembark from the school bus. The application adds another level in security for our students by recording the student as they board the bus and disembark at the school in the morning and at the bus stop in the afternoon. The application integrates with the parent notification application, so it is important for us to implement that program and verify the accuracy of that data before expanding to the student tracking program.
Thank you. These are all things that we have heard about for quite some time, and you've covered quite a few of them, so thank you very much.
Wow, thank you.
Mr. McDonald has a question.
Do. Hopefully it's quick. And you might have to just follow up after the meeting. With all the tech that we have monitoring school buses, do we have on-time statistics for when they're supposed to be at bus stops and at schools?
Yes, sir. I can generate a report through this program, through the GPS tracking program, that gives me a percentage of on-time buses and those that are arriving late. The system, and we can tweak that because right now it defines late. If a bus gets to the school 2 minutes before school starts, then it's late because it's supposed to be 5 minutes. But yes, sir, we can generate reports for every school.
Yeah, I would like that data, and probably my colleagues would as well.
Ms. Williams, can we make it quick?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Spence and Mr. Pace, for doing the stop arm cameras. The Aragona Civic League and the folks in Bayside will be pleased.
Yes. Thank you. We are recessed, and we will reconvene at 6 o'clock on the dais.
Mr. Keever.
Okay.